Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Covenant Cast. I'm Zach.
And I'm Steven.
And I'm Robert.
And today, we're answering the question, are LCGs sustainable? Well, what have you been up to this week, Mr. Robert? I haven't seen you in a few weeks on the show.
Mostly just drinking, just kidding.
Asterisk, just kidding.
No, it's getting to be warmer weather, so you can make the warm weather drinks, which usually means rum-based things.
I've been hearing a lot about those drinks.
Caipirinhas, yeah. It's a Brazilian rum-based drink of sorts.
Really?
And they're delicious.
Pushed forward by old Bourdain pretty extensively, too.
Yeah.
In a lot of his
yeah, he's been
South
to
American
Brazil
episodes.
on his show a few times, and they're just so tasty. There's almost no mixer. So you're just drinking sweetened booze straight up through a straw, and what's not to like?
I mean, Brazil and rum are two of my favorite words when it comes to anything I'm eating or drinking.
In a glass.
I watched Interstellar last night.
Catching up.
First time.
Before you say what you thought, I'm going to say you thought it was pretty good.
No, I thought it was phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really good, right?
I thought it was almost a step forward for cinema, but I know that I would get eviscerated for saying that.
And seeing it in theaters was a treat as well.
Oh, yeah, I imagine. Yeah, for sure. But I definitely felt like I was in space. I think it was the best way to actually envision or embody the passage of time as a relative function of reality, which is hard to do. And they did it extremely well.
Sure.
Extremely well.
Yeah, it was True Detective followed by that made me a Matthew McConaughey just
Oh, nice.
sold.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, he was definitely a root for kind of hero,
Yeah.
even in his inadequacies or insecurities with his own family.
They all exist. That's awesome. Well, I was basically just doing Destiny Weekend.
Oh, yeah.
That happened this past week. We had
for
Lucas
a while.
on, and that was great to watch. I loved getting to see both Eric, a local player who's been playing Ray Double Padawan since the very beginning of the game.
Oh, nice. That's
I
his
didn't know
jam,
that.
huh?
He came in, he had bought no spirit, and he borrowed 2 vibro knives, and opened his box and put the rest, put stuff in. And he was telling me, he was like, yeah, I was at home, it was midnight, the night before the tournament, and I was just hoping these cards were good. And he was like, it felt like I was taking cards that were pretty okay in my deck and replacing them with cards that were really good.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, he did pretty well. He's in the finals. We'll have those videos coming up soon. But
So what you're saying is all you got to do is slot in some vibro knives.
It does a lot.
problem solved.
There
Let me
you go.
tell you that it's pretty incredible to see some of the cards too. Like he's BB-8. You know, there's a lot of
He had a
talk
BB-8 in his
about
deck.
why is BB-8 in the deck, and I absolutely love it because you get on the old web, the internet as we refer to it as, and you see the deck gets posted, and the first comment is, oh, I would cut BB-8, yeah, and add these cards instead, and it's like. Yeah, I get that. That's your preconceived notion of what's good. Nobody's confused or alarmed by that. Nobody's surprised. But maybe you should just try to fight those assumptions, first, before you just say, oh yeah, these cards that I've already got on my list over here of not good cards should never be played.
Yeah.
It's like, well, obviously they did some work, huh?
And literally, I watched his whole top 8 when he was playing it. And it's like BB-8 comes on the table and just money. Every time he's money. Just that little guy. It's crazy.
He was doing
Anyways,
work.
and I think that's really important in any game to challenge the assumptions. I'm actually writing a very long-winded blog about my Hanrei deck in
Class,
Worlds.
it's been a while since we got a long
3,000 words, here we go.
Yeah, it's very long-winded, but at the root of it is really just challenging assumptions. I know even in my own deck building, you start thinking oh, these cards are untouchable. They have to be in the deck.
Right.
And then it's like, well, what if you took them out and just tried it?
Yeah.
Or with Eric's deck on the
question.
BB-8, it's just put the deck together, play it as it is, then make some judgments. And he even said, I would change these 4 cards or whatever, but BB-8 wasn't one of them.
Wasn't one.
Well,
about LCGs,
let's get to it. So, are LCGs sustainable? And this is a fascinating topic to me because we've now seen the Game of Thrones LCG in 2008 was the first LCG. I actually think the Warhammer Invasion was the first.
Technically, yeah.
Kind of the first.
Yeah.
It was like they couldn't keep
Cthulhu
releasing
as well.
it.
Wasn't that the same kind of thing? It was one of those.
Wait, it was Cthulhu.
I think it was Cthulhu.
I think it was
that
just straight up Cthulhu.
Didn't have enough players to make more, so they did this.
They couldn't make booster packs.
Oh, that's right.
They
Became
couldn't
an
make booster
LCG.
packs, and they had product, and it was like, well, we want to put these out for the fans, and how can we do that? And so they ended up releasing it as a fixed box.
Yeah.
And then that box sold more than anything else they had been selling. And they were like,
And they're like, wait a minute.
why don't ding! So then they converted the Thrones LCG to that. And I think the Thrones LCG gave us a really good picture of really the life cycle of an LCG. And you kind of had this spike and all these people getting in because it's non-collectible and you can get what you want. And then at some point the game kind of plateaus and it's just slow growth. Then at some point that slow growth turns into slow attrition.
Decay.
And then at some point that speeds up. And you kind of get to where first edition ended before second edition came back.
And your meta crashes into the mountain.
But here's the reason that we're approaching this topic is we've been heavily involved in the LCG space from the very beginning,
Right.
and kind of that's where we cut our teeth and where a lot of our listeners and viewers are going to know us from. But B is that now we've seen the cycle of Game of Thrones first edition, and we saw the second edition hit as it did, and we have a lot of other LCGs, the Star Wars LCG and the Netrunner LCG, are now reaching kind of that critical mass point, are now having a rotation policy implemented, but it still very much feels like there's not a clear picture for how these are going to last and whether or not they are meant to last for an indefinite period of time. So I think probably the first question is, like with any game, do you approach any game saying that this is going to be relevant for the rest of my gaming career? Because there is the habit of doing that with any new property you get into, and you say, I'm so excited about this right now, I can't wait to play this for the rest of my life, right?
Yep.
But I can't name to this day a single game that has been the case for me personally. So recognizing, and when I buy a board game, like I expect to play it a few times up front and then maybe pull it out once a year or twice a year,
or
that kind of thing. And then the reality of anybody out there with a board game collection, you have your wall of games, you don't play them ever. You never do. And so they're just as alive as a dead LCG, right? Like
It becomes a
no
new
difference.
game, which is collecting them.
Yeah, that's
Well,
true.
and I think
that's absolutely true.
I think the reason this assumption gets built is twofold, which is we've seen the oldest games in the industry. So we're talking about 40K.
Yeah.
In the 80s, we've seen D&D even, the first
Yeah.
one of the biggest front runner of RPGs. We've seen Magic the Gathering,
Miniature
still alive
RPG
today.
card. There they are.
And even Magic, it's not just Magic, it's Pokemon, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon's been around since I was 9.
Yeah.
Just
And
a wee
It
tot.
just keeps going. Yeah,
Sweet tots.
Just a wee bun tot. Anyways, so you see that, and then I think the other part is just human psychology, which is you're getting in, and it's like you don't think about the fact that this someday is probably going to end.
Yeah.
Like you don't start off it's like even like if you think about it in terms of like going back to when I was 10, it's like most of the people I was friends with when I was 10, I wasn't thinking there'll come a day where like I just don't see them anymore, right?
That's how you turn into a nihilist.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Because then it's like, well, I don't
Exhausting.
want to be attached to them. So I think it's just kind of natural to kind of not think about that in that way. But the reality is most games do end.
But we do have an example of at least 3 or 4 that haven't, right?
Yes.
So well, certainly. So is it the aspiration then of every game to get to that point, to join the pantheon of forever games?
Jeopardy and Wheel of
Is that the
Fortune,
kind of thing?
You know?
Well,
Like,
and
is that even fair to place on the feet of an LCG? No,
I'd say
Robert?
no. I'd say no.
I mean-
because it's I think an unreasonable pretext, just given the multitude, the uncounted multitude of games that are out there, and we've patted ourselves on the back for getting one hand's worth of games that have really stood the test of time. So I think the obvious fair assumption from the get-go is, be it for creative or design reasons or marketplace conditions, player habit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This thing's going to say bye-bye eventually, but I don't think that means you have to necessarily rest on your laurels, or that you should, and that there aren't things you can do in real time when it's in its prime or heyday, whatnot, to keep it vital, keep it as interesting and invested in as possible.
It's probably worth specifying expandable games too, because so board games and chess and like all the traditional ones, and even D&D to a certain extent, doesn't really have the pressure of lasting. Like you can put out your first edition D&D and people can play it for the rest of time, and that's fine. But expandable games where you're actively saying we're going to grow this and change it and evolve it, there's only a few. The Magics and Pokemon and 40K are some of the only ones that have ever done that, continually putting out content.
And I think to answer the question, should we even put that on an LCG? I think the aspiration of a game should be to attempt to basically have the longest life cycle as possible. Because if people are playing it and enjoying it, the reality of an expandable game is you get in with this understanding of this game is not just a one-time buy. It's not just a thing. It's a game I get to keep coming back to, and I get to advance my skill in, and I get to keep exploring in the same thing. So by that nature, it's like it's kind of like you want, as someone creating the product to make sure your customers get to use that product for at least a certain amount of time, and like it's a viable thing to do. Should we expect it to be sustainable? That's probably unrealistic.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the ideal. But then the other half of that for me is that by the very nature of an expandable game, which is anything that has continual releases, it's very much geared towards people that want a deeper, evolving, ever-changing experience. So I actually think that the more games that are sustained forever or sustainable, just keep going, is probably, it leads to less experimentation. And I think this is one of the things that, it's like with Magic, people just assume Magic is the game and that's what they play because it's what everyone's playing. But then like, is the experience you're getting from Magic innovating on tabletop? Is it changing anything? You don't need change for it to be enjoyable or whatever.
Right.
But it almost, in a sense, like there is a natural like life and death to a living card game or to any game. And it gives, even with the Thrones, right? It's like it went through that cycle we talked about, and then they did a second edition. And it's like, this is effectively breathing your life. You've learned things over a decade, as it turns out, and you get to make changes and provide an experience. But at the same time, if new games come along that people are interested in, they stop playing the older games.
Is that bad, basically?
Is it bad? I don't think it's
bad. Is that a problem? Well, compared to two other things, right? So we've got like TV series, and I like to think, I've always thought of LCGs as kind of like a like MMO subscription, or like a monthly game, so just like a World of Warcraft subscription, right? It's like you pay your like $15 a month, and you enjoy that kind of constant and continuous experience until you no longer find that valuable, and then you cut the subscription off and you go on your way, right? Same thing with a TV series. It's like, I don't expect any number of TV shows that I'm watching right now to last forever. I very much want them to, and I want a conclusion and to kind of see them as this kind of perfectly constructed whole. When it's finished, it's finished. The idea has been explored, and then we put it away. Maybe revisit it every now and again, but I don't expect to get new episodes. So maybe we should hone our expectations around that kind of understanding of other entertainment style experiences, right? When was really the fourth or fifth movie in the franchise the best one, right? When was the sixth season of the TV show better than the first, second, and third? Like those kinds of things. We actually had
That's way more common, actually.
It is right. It is. There's a question that was answered a while back from, and I forgot what the name was, but was basically saying, why do we assume that expandable games are getting better, when in reality it seems like they ultimately just get worse.
Yeah.
Like they get overly complex, they get overly confusing.
Unfocused.
The ideas start to be more graspy, graspers, rather than the core of the game, why you came there in the first place. We ran into this with a lot of LCGs. So maybe we should start talking in terms of, what does this life cycle look like? And should it be closed at a certain point? I mean, do we have to really continue to strive to keep this thing going?
Sure.
The rotation, these kinds of things. Like, what if you said you get 4 cycles and 4 deluxes, and game's over? Is that even financially feasible? Would people stop buying in at a certain point?
I think that's one of the concerns you run into is, you get to the end of the third cycle. If I'm now interested in the game, at that point, is it worth getting in? Is it worth starting to play in those events? And one thing I want to note on your TV analogy before we get too far away from it is, it reminds me a lot of Lost, the show, which is, people love this show. And up front, it was this incredible story. I actually didn't watch Lost. I did.
I didn't either.
I watched Lost. I watched the first episode of every season and the last episode. And then, because the first episode every season, it would be a big watch party, but they do a 15, 20 minute.
You're that guy?
Well, they do I was in college and super busy. But they do a 15 or 20 minute, hey, here's everything that happened last season that you need to know.
Okay.
And then I'd watch the first episode. And then I'd watch the last episode, missing some pieces, but then next year, first episode, I get all the information I need.
I think that kind of undercuts that it's a good show kind of a premise.
The thing is, everyone that was watching it was like super obsessed with it, right? And the reality of what that show felt like is that it was very successful, and they kind of were going, and then at some point it was like, we don't know where we're going with this. Like, we didn't have an end in mind, and it was just kind of aimless. And so
it was during the Iraq War. So.
Whoa.
Too soon? Sorry.
Yeah, still too soon. But Versus a show to me like even Game of Thrones, which has always had, and like we know it's going to end. And I feel like that makes it much more constrained. It gives them a mission that they're trying to get to. And so if you compare that to like an LCG, I look at Game of Thrones First Edition and it very much feels like, well, let's keep going. Like,
I mean, it feels like a collectible game that every new set had to introduce some new mechanic, whether it was influence or the
shadow mechanics,
or it's like because that was the old collectible thing. It's like every time you have to put your marketing materials out that say, "And can you believe what we're doing this time?" It's like now you can play cards face down and put stuff on them and then play them out. It's like. So they very much had this kind of impetus to introduce new mechanics and new effects as much as possible moving along. And of course that stacks up like crazy.
Yeah.
And that is the reason, I think that's the reason why expandable games do not last. It's because you take something and you just start stacking stuff on top of it.
Well, and I think that's why games like Magic and Pokemon have lasted, which is they have a very tight rotation policy. And so even if you did introduce the shadow mechanic in Cycle 4, if it was a CCG, by Cycle 5, Cycle 1 and 2 are gone, right? And so like Shadow's around for 2 years, and then it's gone. And you can explore this territory, but instead of stacking, it's like you have this constantly moving lens of like what you're looking at the game. And it's like, well, we had Shadow back in 2008, but we also didn't have this other mechanic. And so in 2017, we can release those in back-to-back cycles, and we've never seen these at the same time in the game. And so
let's take that as a starting point then. Can LCGs do the same thing? Can they be sustainable by having a tight rotation policy, releasing content that isn't kind of like, what would you say, hostile to each other, mechanics that stack on top of each other in a disfavorable way? And if they can, why is that not being done? Or is it, right? So we're about to see for the first time in Netrunner.
Yep.
That's the first real rotation that we'll see, right?
I think it is the first rotation. Yeah, because Netrunner came out in 2012, and it was the first in the current wave of LCGs.
Yeah. But is that, don't you get a general sense at this point that it's too long?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, heck yeah.
Well, and I think that's so looking at the cycle where you have a spike, and then you have a plateau, maybe slow growth, slow decay, and then you typically have a fall off towards the end of a game.
And worth noting, that's like a traditional product cycle.
That's a normal product
bunch
cycle.
Bunch of hype up front, everybody gets in, it swells.
A huge amount of adoption,
and then
retention,
it sits for a while, and then it decays as people move to something else.
Yeah,
and
so
Lord knows, games are the easiest thing to move from one to the other, depending on the flavor of the month, flavor of the year.
Totally. So if you have that life cycle, I think the question, like you were saying, becomes, can the plateau stay forever?
Or grow.
Or slightly grow forever. And tabletop as an industry is growing. So there's constantly more people getting in the space as it sits. Eventually we're going to run out of people. But
I'd love to have that problem.
The other thing with the game, and I think this is the real trick, is that if you have a great game that's expandable, that people really love, that offers a unique experience with a specific theme and whatnot, the longer you can bend that cycle up, the more value everyone gets out of that system inherently, right? And so whether it's constant, we sustain forever, or it just means that Netrunner lasts 20 years, I think it's kind of the same end, which is you're just trying to, how can you extend this product life cycle, and what is it about the LCG format in general that creates the cycle that we're in right now?
And is there a critical mass? Like if you can take the swell and the plateau, if you can get it to the 5-year mark, does it just perpetuate itself forever? Like, is that what we've seen with 40K and Magic? That they just had such a critical mass for so long that it's now like this just continual force of perpetuation, basically.
Yeah, it's juiced in there.
But they said like lose like 25% of their players every 2 years.
Couple
or something?
years, yeah.
I think there's a lot of factors that make those games so unique, whether it's their first. But then you look at Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like, this isn't even Magic. This isn't the first game. This isn't the second big game, Pokemon. This is number 3.
But it's literally a show about card games.
Yeah.
That's true.
It makes sense. Heart of the cards, baby. Heart of the cards.
It's playing the meta directly.
So, with an LCG, I think critical mass is part of it. I think you have to have enough players. But we talked about CCGs and LCGs last week. One of the best things about the LCG format is that the number of players you need playing it to sustain that model is dramatically less.
It's very low.
It's criminally low compared to a collectible game for all the reasons we talked about last week. So what do you think needs to be looked at when it comes to LCGs to extend that life cycle?
How do we extend the life cycle? Well, so one thing for me is what's lacking in the LCG relationship right now between product and consumer is excitement. Straight up. I mean, that is what it is. You get this trickle of products, which is very nice for
One
a
of the
lot of
biggest
people.
benefits.
It is the benefit of the LCG. You can keep up with it. You don't really feel overwhelmed. You have plenty of time to sort through the new pack and
Slow
add the
burn.
cards that you need. Slow burn, light on the wallet over time, which is great, right? So that's really excellent. But after a couple of years of that, of exploring that system and that slow burn of I'll replace this one card every couple months or these 2 cards every month, you're just not really excited anymore. It's hard to open a pack and be like, huzzah!
Yeah.
Oh my
Everything
God.
has changed, kind of a thing.
Well,
and
and-
even a deluxe, it's very difficult to see that shift.
I think the core set, right? The other problem that creates is when the game first comes out, that spike. One of the reasons it happens is because it's so easy to get in. The barrier to entry is so low, phenomenally low, lower than any expandable game I've ever been into. But as we've seen with second edition of Thrones, I think it made that the first year of a game, because of that trickle. It's not just eventually when we have a whole bunch, because this happened in first edition at the end. You have so many packs that a pack comes out and it's like,
Is there anything in here that
there's
matters?
it's like it can
Here's
I
a
can
slight
kind of
upgrade.
and the way that game was played is you run one of most unique. So it's I put a card in my deck from the new pack
Yeah.
that I may or may not ever see, and when I do see it, it may or may
Play
not
an
get
entire
killed
turn
immediately
at 70, I could
and
never
see it.
Yeah.
But it also creates a problem up front, which is it's easy to get into and it's easy to keep up with, which is great. But I know that 4 months into second edition of Thrones, I'm just
Not enough diversity.
Where is the excitement?
I'm
Where
just-
is the challenge? Where's the puzzle? Why am I just playing the same game I've been playing over and over
Yeah.
with slightly different art on the
and
board?
as a target player, it's I'm getting 2 cards a month.
Yeah.
Oh my! Literally, I only really care to play Targ, and then maybe alliance with whatever.
And they've got their work cut out for them now with L5R. Same thing,
Yeah.
7 clans. And so what? You get 1 to 2 cards every pack.
Which you get neutrals and plots and thrones,
Et cetera.
Same with it. But I agree with you in that the excitement factor is low, which you forget because I didn't play CCGs for a while, but then Destiny happens. And it's
We kind of got our perspective righted. we got the other side of the pendulum again.
Yeah.
So let me give you some ideas. Let's
All
throw
right.
some ideas to the floor here, to the listeners, to the viewers, to everybody out there. I'm just going to run them down, and then we can talk through them. One is the necessity of organized play, creating the excitement, filling in the gap between
I have so many thoughts on
product
this.
excitement and actual tournament organized play style stuff. Not necessarily tournaments, as we talked about a while back, but some form of getting together and changing the scope of things in a way that creates the same kind of excitement and challenge that a blast of cards does. Second is an actual blast of cards, something that I would call an injection product. So I was talking to Lucas even about this recently. I think it may have been on the cast, where you have a Netrunner release that is $10 to $15 to $20, and it's just 25 new IDs.
Which is the main character you are in the game if you don't play Netrunner.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. 25 new IDs, or in Destiny, it'd be 60 new characters. Or in
in
Game of
Thrones,
Thrones,
it's
it's
20
here's
new house cards.
20 house cards, agendas, whatever it is. And just boom, inject it once every half year, let's say. So twice a year, 4 times a year, every quarter, whatever it is. And that could look like a lot of things. And then we could also have an actual endpoint with the possibility of a second edition. Or a next edition, so we could get 3rd edition Thrones, 4th edition Thrones, 5th edition Thrones. Does the actual endpoint create more excitement for the next edition? Or does it hinder excitement and make nobody want to get interested? So that's a question. We also have restricted lists and tweaks to the actual hands-on designer process, right?
I have so many responses to each.
We have faster rotation, which I think is a big deal. And then one of my personal favorites, kind of sneaky collectability inserted into the LCG
You do
format.
love this.
All you gotta say, and most of the people listening and watching are going to agree with me immediately. I promise.
And the other half is going to not agree at all.
They'll hate it. I'm just gonna put this out there. 1 out of every 100 chapter packs has a foil card in it. Right?
Or full bleed.
Or a full bleed. Or your chapter pack has 1 full bleed card in it, just randomly of the
one of the
of
60
spread.
cards, yeah.
Or just a card missing.
Just half a pack randomly.
Now you just have to buy another pack.
But you just have, or an alternate art version of a card is in 1 out of every 20 packs or something.
Sure.
any amount of collectability to give a bit more of a treasure hunting chase kind of feel, so that when you do get your chapter pack, it's not like, all right, the only reason, like the quickest way for me to get these, I just want the cardboard and plastic to be gone. Opening it is a hassle, right?
Yeah.
I just want the cards. Whereas now opening it is similar to a collectible game, and it's like, I could get something
You're looking
fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's a bit exciting.
That's why I kind of like the guaranteed full bleed or alt art or something, because it's like, you know, when you're buying the pack, you're going to get something exciting.
Yeah.
And it may be that I get a Greyjoy card that I don't care about, but it
But I
adds
do.
value. You care, and it's like maybe you got the target card.
And now you're trying to and that's a pursuit that could last, that could create excitement forever. You're trying to full art your deck.
Sure. Woo. Right. I mean, that's exactly. I would do that in a
Right?
heartbeat.
You'd be
That'd
trying
the
to
goal.
collect all of
because it'd be beautiful.
Yeah, right?
It'd be beautiful.
But how does that actually help the game?
Well, it would definitely drive sales, I think, without a doubt. Like, the number of people who would buy more than one chapter pack would go from 0% to greater than 0%. I don't know how big it would be, but there's actually a reason, an incentive to, even as a store, give out a pack as a prize, because it still has value. So now tournaments will be easier to run, those kinds of things. But I also do think that over time, if you're also engaged in not just the playing of the game, but the collecting of the game, as we've seen, there's definitely a persona that is into that you're accomplishing the full bleed deck. And that might take you years, but you're there for all those
But
years.
they've already rotated the cards.
You might have dropped out. I don't know. You'd have to look at it. But I do think it keeps people more invested and more engaged because they have a secondary goal than just playing the game.
I've long thought, basically ever since they announced it, that is just legitimately the answer to draft and sealed in LCGs, which is those draft packs. If there is 1 or 4 or 5 full bleed cards in each one, I think drafts start happening.
Oh yeah.
And I
because you
think-
actually draft, like, the cards matter.
There's value to the cards, because right now you draft Netrunner and it's like, it's fun, but like paying $20 to get a bunch of cards I don't want at all is dramatically different than paying $20, having a good experience, and walking away with 5 awesome cards that I didn't have. Which I think is a very cool way to do that. And I think that's one of the things about LCGs that is lacking, is the sealed format or the limited play, because that is such a great way for new players to get in. You can walk in, understand how to play the game, own nothing, and start building a collection.
And spoiler alert, the number of collectible players, like of Magic and when I was playing Spoils too, that don't actually even have a constructed desire at all is very high. Like just coming in, doing a draft every Friday, selling the cards or trading them or whatever it is, and being on your way. Like, that's awesome.
It's
I
really
love
cool.
that you can just play limited formats.
So you want to walk through these, because I have so many
Let's start
thoughts.
with the biggest one, which I think is organized play. This is the lowest hanging fruit because it can be done outside of any kind of grand decisions from the producing company itself. So organized play, as run by a store, now they can obviously inject some of their own ideas and support. But we could all, as stores, technically do a lot of this stuff.
Sure. I mean, organized play at large.
Let's talk about, first of all, Ashes. Rise of the Phoenix Board just have been doing this new format for these tournaments, where you literally have this like dark and light thing.
It's really cool.
Player choices mattering, and then whoever wins the tournament gets to kind of put some points towards whether the next Phoenix Born will be evil or good, and these kinds of things. And so you're actually affecting the future cards, which is again why L5R was such a big deal whenever it was in its heyday, is that you were literally affecting the storyline. You had a stake in the ultimate universe, in the game itself. So can we tailor organized play to inject excitement where the cards and the products themselves might be lacking?
And I think that's where I think about second edition Thrones and the reality of 4 months in, I started getting bored. But had there been higher stakes or something else going on that wasn't just the game, I would have shown up anyway. And I think this is what I'm excited to see if L5R does or not, which is the idea of like how Targ is doing is affecting cards that are coming out and choices that are being made and formats of tournaments and prizes at future events and all of these things. It's like, well, now I'm playing Targ to like represent Targ, and you start developing house loyalty. And now it's not just like, well, I'm tired of playing against Lannister. It's, well, I got to keep fighting the fight.
Yeah.
Because they're putting you into that thing, right?
And here's the other thing about organized play that you could do is you could have deck building changes constantly, right? So like for the month of March, you can have 5 copies of a card in your deck, and you can't run these 5 cards. And then the next month, it's like you can only have 1 copy of any card in your deck, and you can run cards from this house and this house for no penalty.
Well, and
You could constantly be playing with that kind of stuff.
imagine if that was just the understanding of how the game worked. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I think the most criminally underused part of LCGs is, anytime you're looking at a format or a product or a line, the reality is like, what can this do that nothing else can?
Yeah.
And so when I look at LCGs,
Oh, please give me the answer. I want to know.
I want to know. When I look at LCGs, they're putting out a product every month.
Yeah.
That is
Approximately.
hopefully, if things go right, if we said our prayers to
Zach
the
all
old
wound
gods
up.
and the new. Anyways, so they're supposed to have a monthly release for this game.
Yeah.
And to me, just like you were saying, you can change the game on a monthly basis. Like it's built in. Really, if you look at like Arkham and Lord of the Rings, Arkham's a really good example of, I'm always looking forward to the next pack because I want to know what's happening in the next chapter of this story.
Yeah.
It's not about me winning the next game. It's like, I'm just excited to see where this story goes next. And so there's that element too, where you can build story into, but just from a player perspective, the idea of like, Thrones pack comes out and game changes.
Let's say there's a single card in this pack, and that pack has a little blurb, it's a paragraph about something that has happened, and then it changes the format until the next pack comes
The
out.
Tyrells betrayed the Lannisters.
Yeah.
You can only align these houses.
Yeah.
Or
Somebody mentioned even a suggestion on YouTube, the YouTube channel, various things like this, that was like a Civil War format. It's like everybody this month has to play Targaryen, which would be very annoying.
everyone has to be playing Targaryen or allied to Targaryen.
Yeah, or allied to Targaryen or
period.
something. Yeah,
Like,
you got
this
to
is
have
what you have
them
to do.
around. Yeah.
And
Fascinating
in that
stuff.
way, it's like you start telling a story, right? Where it's like, which house allied with Targ the best through this thing? And it's like it was Lannister. So 8 months from now, it's like back in the Battle of Ruby Ford with this
Yeah.
pack, the Lannisters came to the aid of the Targaryens.
Man, I'm just imagining so much. Like
It's
you could
unreal.
have a little for when you have like corporate buyout. It's like every non-Wayland ID has -10 influence. It's like, oh, they bought it all up. Like they control the market.
Yeah.
It'd be so fascinating.
And like you can just imagine, for a month, it's like, hey, Wayland doesn't have to spend influence on anything.
nuts.
What happens? and you get a month of crazy.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing is that we played draft Destiny here on Destiny Weekend, and I had a lot of concerns about this is going to be too, like, Palpatine type is going to be too good. There's these deck combinations are going to be insane, and it's like, it didn't matter at all because it's fresh and different and exciting and interesting, and it's like, by the time you shake out what's too good in a month, it's changed.
Yeah.
So it would be, I think that's, organized play can do so much, and the stores could do it just on their end. They could just have special like league rules, or every time you come into play in a weekly tournament or a monthly tournament, there's a week before that thing starts, here are the new things. Now, it's a lot easier to do it in a narrative style if the company is on board. So if FFG is willing to play ball and say, we're going to craft kind of a mini story throughout this cycle, where the Lannisters do this thing and then get betrayed by these people, and then this guy goes over here, and then the neutrals come in, and then so you could have it kind of plotted out, and then you could make that your thing. But even without a narration, you could have stores or just people putting on tournaments, introducing some level of excitement in the organized play level, so that you don't have to have involvement from a greater entity that might not have the desire to do those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I think this is a great way to answer the problem of excitement, which is just that you stay engaged, you want to keep playing, you're playing for more than just optimal play and winning, and it keeps the ground moving, which I think everyone in this format likes.
Yeah. We take a second and talk about cooperative games. Because we mentioned Arkham, and this is really important to mention that Arkham and Lord of the Rings, as far as LCGs are concerned, could go on forever. Undoubtedly.
As far as sustainability?
As far as sustainability goes, cooperative games are incredible because, like nothing else, Arkham is literally like me watching a new episode of a TV series that I like.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Just forever. And I can not get the next 6 packs and get the 7th. I guess that's the worst example possible. Get the first of the next cycle and still be right there and still enjoy it and still play it. I haven't fallen behind. I don't need to catch up. You can pick your serials, SERIAL, not cereals like Lucky Charms.
Either one.
What you want to play. Oh, I'm interested in Carcosa. I'm going to go collect that cycle. I'm not interested in Dunwich Legacy. I'll leave that one be.
Sure.
So those could last forever, right? Like, honestly, if you're looking for a way to make LCG sustainable, cooperative games are perfect for the LCG format. And you could probably make the argument that it is the only type of game that should be an LCG if you were really wanting to get like into the thick of the analytics, I guess, on these kinds of things.
Sure.
But it's a home run. Cooperative LCGs are a complete home run for everybody involved.
I think, again, the reason that is going back to this idea that they have a monthly release. And they're using it. They're actually, cooperative LCGs are using the monthly release to advance a story. Competitive LCGs are not right now.
Yeah.
They kind of are. It's like this cycle is themed Klansman and Lannister this.
And you might read a sheet
No.
in the thing, but I have not seen very many people do that.
Yeah, too superficial.
And it doesn't matter. You're not bought into it. It's fiction aside from you, not a part of the game experience that you're having.
Yeah.
All right, so organized play. So we've covered that. What about injection products? We like this idea? Basically just scatter shots and excitement right into the brains, hearts, and minds of people. Terminal Directive was not exactly unlike this kind of idea for Netrunner.
I mean, it's close, but I think part of a lot what all these things are doing in terms of being, sustainable or not, in terms of cultivating excitement and interest is ultimately what we're trying to do here. It's still that old foil between the words changing. Are they the competitive / tournament players, and then the casual players? It's the frequency, it's the energy involved, and I think if a game can do it in a fundamental kind of way with something like these injection sets, where we're changing the totality of the aspect of the game. Yeah, there's these fun flavor twists that you can do in terms of alignments and who you splash with or who you don't kinds of questions. But what's the fundamental reason why people jump in so hard at the beginning in the first place? Why isn't it midway through the life cycle? Why isn't it 3/4? Simple logic probably going to tell you because it's new, it's shiny, and you don't really know that much about it, so you want to get in and discover it. But part of the problem with the like long-term rotation bit with even the LCGs is that they've got this protractedness to them, and so you're exacerbating this nadir of excitement variable. And are you going to get them back in with that? The ejection thing seems right, but then you're asking yourself balance questions. And then once you're playing with those kinds of questions, you have to ask yourself, is this a sound investment as a manufacturer of the game to do something like this? Because you only have 60 cards in one of these packs, so you're going to put whatever the percentage of those happen to be, determining on how many copies you get, that kind of stuff. Do you want a designer to play around with that? And I think that's part of the same reason why, particularly with LCGs, they were so hands off. It's like, we don't want our errata, we don't want to, this kind of thing, because there's only so much. If you start, cherry picking the things that you need to pull out or fix, it becomes a tedious business, and it's another undercutting of player interest. So it's like, I would love the Long Voyage to have, stayed around in 1.0 Thrones forever. I thought that was a great card, but then the immediate concern was it changed the paradigm dramatically. It's now a 3-draw game with fat decks and all this kind of stuff. It's
Very
like,
fat.
well, what's the problem with that exactly?
Yeah.
It is profoundly different, and it makes some decks just sing, and other decks are now paling in comparison. But guess what? The game is profoundly new and interesting now, and decks that we have never seen before need to be contended with.
Well, I think that's one of the major benefits of rotation, though, is that you, even with Netrunner now, it's like, if later this year when it was rotating, the first 5 cycles were just gone, you have this immediate moment of like, everything I've known about this game is gone. I'm even imagining at some point I expect Destiny to rotate, and it's like, not having all the cards I currently know just foundationally shifts your perspective. But then going back to the injection thing there, I think the hard part for me is to get to the like best part of an LCG in my mind. You need to get like 12 to 18 months in. That's like the card pool. And so then I'm like, well, what if you did first 6 products was a deluxe set? You get just a bunch of cards up front. But then you're immediately defeating one of the best benefits of an LCG is the low barrier of entry. And it's like, well, if you have to buy 3 core sets and then 6 deluxe boxes to start, it's like,
It's a non-starter.
well, now you got a problem, right?
The daily hit. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
and
gotta
so,
get that.
but I do think the reality of like, I'm imagining you have a core set. I would like starting with a deluxe, like just start with a bigger.
And that's what
bunch of
Arkham
cards.
did, right?
Yeah.
They started with Dunwich.
And then you have your 6-pack cycle, and it's like, I would not be against right there having a, whatever game it is, Thrones pack that's like literally 3 new house cards for each house. It's like there's 3 ways to play Targ
Kind of a big injection.
right here.
Or also what Arkham did is they had 2 scenarios before you had the first actual canon
print on
release
demand
after
ones.
the core set. Yeah, so it's like, we don't have any player cards, but here's some things to play with
Yeah.
in the interim.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities because even in that way, right now they have the capability to do that. It's like, could you not also 4 times a year release like a story expansion pack for Thrones? And it's like, here's another way to use your cards in this alternate.
And that's kind of
thing.
what Directive was trying to do. That's kind of what Damon
Yeah,
was
with the campaign mode.
where it's like this campaign. So there's some ideas being explored, but I think the key word that Robert hit on that is important is discovery. That's why the collectible shotgun blast is exciting, because this is brand new. Discover all of this stuff, figure all of this stuff out. It's like a big puzzle. And the LCG, even if it rotates, certainly if it rotates as slowly as it is, there's not this giant discovery moment once 2 cycles go and 1 comes in, or however it is. That's
Well, honestly,
shift
after
in
you buy the
focus.
core sets and start playing, there's never again a giant discovery moment.
Yeah.
Because you're slowly acquiring. So I have little discoveries. Like,
Yeah.
oh, this plot's better than I thought. This character's better than I thought.
Yeah.
But at that point, I'm never like, oh my God, what do I even do?
It never becomes to me like I need to spend all day thinking about this game.
And yeah, in the constant between both the collectible and the LCG kinds of games is that there are always attritioning players. But with a collectible game, because you do have those massive singular injections of new cards with a new set, there is that opportunity of disproportionate discovery, excitement, and then of course intake of fresh players, new blood, this kind of a thing, which keeps your player base propped up. But if you're always kind of going to have just incremental levels,
There's nothing to get that
of
new
little bits
excitement
of
in.
excitement. You know, like you said, 2 cards for my bread and butter folk. It's like, I was hoping for.
And if they're worth playing.
Yeah.
Like if they're like top level
Yeah.
cards. And the other thing, so the two things I think LCGs are lacking is by not rotating faster. At some point, you get to that sweet spot of an LCG. But like when you get there, it's like now it's $500 to start playing.
Yeah.
Or
These are
more
hard
expensive.
problems to solve.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like that's why one of the reasons I think rotation happening it has a lot of benefits if it happens faster, which is the card pool's smaller, so it's easier for someone to get in. It also means that old players get a more shifting ground faster, where like you have to start learning to play without Jackson and Netrunner. You have to start learning to play without Beal or whatever these cards are in certain cycles.
So injection product's a possibility. I mean, you could have a moment of discovery. It may not be as giant as 160 new cards, but it could actually be almost bigger than that if you're changing some of the more fundamental natures of the game.
Long voyage.
You know, honestly, yeah. And if you think about Thrones now, you have 40 plot cards just show up out of nowhere. That's like,
Whoa.
so injection products are possible. I want to move on to the rotation element of this, of the list that I had, because I think this could be dramatic. I really do think this could be exceedingly dramatic. And instead of thinking, since we've been sticking to Thrones this episode, let's stick with Thrones.
It's the one we have the most history on.
Rather than having a Greyjoy expansion, a Martell expansion, etc., what if you did this? What if you had a core set, then you had a deluxe, then you had 6 packs, and then that deluxe and all those 6 packs rotated out, and you had a new deluxe. 6 more packs, rotated out, new deluxe, 6 more packs.
Very tight
I'm talking
card
about
pool.
serious rotation.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about practice. I'm talking about serious rotation here. Okay, so is that ultimately going to be a problem for players? Because there's this lingering thing, and it comes from the very beginning of collectible games, that the products we're buying have inherent value. They have physical value, tangible value. The reality is that LCGs do not have that. They just don't, right? They do not have the same kind of value that a collectible game has, that Magic has, any of that. So if you start to envision your LCG experience as a monthly subscription to anything else, whether it's a gym or a Netflix or anything else, you're paying your $15 a month no matter what's happening. So why would that really be a problem, to just keep paying $50 a month, even though some of those cards are no longer usable? Like, is that a problem?
I think there's a lot of things to balance there. Under the assumption that it's working how it's currently working, those 5th and 6th packs get questionable, right? For players, where it's like if you're a manufacturer or a store trying to carry and sell this product, pack 6 could be dead on arrival. It's like if I know in a month that's gone from usability. So I think from a practical
I wasn't
standpoint,
enjoying the cycle anyway.
it might make more sense to have it be like a 2-cycle thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
So your 12th pack is dead instead
like-
of your 6th?
well, you know, it's like at pack 12, you're still buying pack 12 because it's still going to be good for another like 7 months.
Yeah.
But packs 1 through 6 are going to go away at that point.
Yeah.
And then you just have a much tighter card
Okay.
pool.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I think the tighter card pool does a lot of things. It lets the designers explore more, honestly.
Yeah.
It changes the game way faster. And, on the inherent value note of rotation, it also lets you establish a legacy format.
Oh, it would be an insane legacy
Alternate
format.
formats
After,
are
8
key.
years of just a cycle or
Just
two?
Wildcats, man.
But when you think about LCGs, having 2 cycles, that's a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's still a pretty long period of time. I love the idea of having at least once a year rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just see. I know that's a very dangerous. You can't just see what happens, right? That's a big bet to make.
Yeah.
But I really do think that could be a very successful thing.
Well, and that's what happens once you hit rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Because then even right now, once Netrunner hits rotation, about once a year they'll rotate.
Gone.
Sure. Start over, burn the force.
Swipe off the table and
that's the goal.
discover again.
That's what
the
I
whole thing,
think.
Discover again.
Even at a 2-year rotation, which is a more standard what we've seen with Magic. Even let's say it's 4 cycles. If at the start of the 5th cycle, cycles 1 and 2 go away. Now every year you're losing 2 cycles.
Yeah.
And so you have new releases and also a shifting ground. So I think that really it lowers the barrier of entry later in the game. It keeps the card pool smaller, so you don't ever get too convoluted. Designers have space to play. And it also just makes it more exciting for current players.
All right, I'm in.
Flat across the board.
What do you think? Are you on faster rotation there?
Yeah, I think they've waited too long.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I won't forget what it was like to be there at Worlds 2015 when they were making this initial announcement, and the crowd went mild.
Yeah.
Hard.
Yeah.
The crowd went
That's
mild
true.
hard,
That's very much
and
true.
I think it's worth noting that it's hard to splice just exactly why that reception was the way it was. It's because they thought they knew what they were getting in an LCG format. If the player base for games or that particular kind of game is inherently conservative, if yada 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 reasons could be enumerated all up and down the yin yang. But I know now that a lot of metas are just kind of stale. We've seen this, and we're looking for something fresh, something new, and you both need a critical mass of card base as well as players in order to catalyze that.
And I think part of that announcement was no one got into Netrunner understanding that.
Correct.
And even now, it's I think Netrunner players would all mostly agree that it would be more healthy for the game to have rotation faster than it would be to not have it at all.
Correct.
Or to have it as slow as it is. And so, it's your cards aren't going to be always playable unless you have a legacy format.
Yeah.
And then they are. It kind of
you've
fixes
gotta
that
have
problem, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm all about a faster rotation policy.
What do you think about collectible elements to these games? Throwing let's say the full art card in every pack.
I think it helps sales.
A
I don't think
random
it
full
helps
art card.
the play of the game.
I mean, it doesn't. If it's logistically not a problem, does it harm anything?
Does it extend the plateau? Does it keep more players playing longer? It's a good question.
Buying. Or
Buying?
playing.
I think buying. But if you're buying, you're probably more likely to play.
You're definitely more likely to play if you
Than
have
zero,
the thing.
yeah.
As great as a zero.
But it's like, how many Magic players or Destiny players are into it because it is effectively a business opportunity. You can play this business opportunity, but I'm in it for the business opportunity.
I don't know. I hope not very many, but I know they're there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think it has to happen. I do think it is a great way to incentivize draft and sealed, though. And I think that is a big lacking factor in the LCG format.
All right. Well, finally, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Last but not least.
Announcing the end. First of all, it has happened. Thrones First Edition, which is a great example, by the way, because you remember when that was less like a planned funeral and more just like the person got kidnapped kind of a thing, right?
What was it?
Conquest.
Yeah. It's like all of a sudden. First Edition Thrones is a great example because when we first got into that, you remember we were hunting down packs.
Oh my gosh.
And it was so exciting, and we were discovering all of these things. Once we got caught up,
But we got in on the money spot.
then we got in the
Yeah,
swing.
it
It was the
prime
right time to get into
We
that
got
game.
caught up. We got all the cards. We did all of the legwork. It was super fun, almost to collect a lot of those out-of-print packs that we couldn't find.
Man,
we
I was
found
looking
it
for-
in this store over here in Maryland, and this store over here.
Balon?
Got all that
Is
stuff.
his name?
It was
The big dragon?
Balon? No, not
Baleron.
Balon. Balerion.
Balerion.
Valerian,
There
yeah.
it is.
Oh, Don't talk
I
about
That
that.
thing sucks.
Yeah.
I remember showing up to
Zach
your
rolls up and
house.
It's just like, who is
And
this guy?
Robert was like, "You need to play against Steven's new deck," and I was like, "All right." And then I just
No, vice versa.
Valerian style.
Kneel everything.
Yeah.
It's like ridiculous. But we were really excited, and then we got into the swing of it, and then it kind of like, and then it was like, okay, this is first edition, and it had some exciting moments for sure, but it was pretty much the same deck that I was playing for month after month after month. So then first edition is announced dead. We are going to reboot the game. So that's the only example that we have so far, I think, of discontinuing. Now, what about Warhammer and Cthulhu?
Warhammer Invasion, Cthulhu,
And then, of course, Conquest went
yeah.
away. So do you remember the end of Warhammer and Cthulhu, Invasion, and the other one, whatever Cthulhu was called?
I think it was
I just
before
wasn't a
mine.
part of those communities, so I can't really
Is it
speak
Call
to
of
that.
Cthulhu?
Call of Cthulhu,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, A, should you have an expected end date on a game, on an LCG? What if you launched, for instance, L5R and said this will end 2022?
Well, I think, we talked about it before, but barring the TV analogy, it's the difference between serial, episodic shows and the ones that, by that, take it a little bit further, the ones that could, in theory, go indefinitely, like House of Cards, about to put on a new season, but their limiting constraint, as far as I've heard in interviews, is like, as long as the principal actors are interested, we'll keep cranking shows. If I say something like a True Detective, which every season has a very finite run, a plotted arc of a story, that kind of a thing. I think you could do it with a card game, in that it's, we're going to have 6 cycles, and each one of these cycles is going to focus on these consecutive elements and game mechanics, themes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to run through it because once we hit those 6 things, that's checking all the boxes. That's
The
going to
experience has been explored.
give the totality of the experiences we as designers, developers, what have you, can see it from the onset, rather than just thinking about, what's that new keyword that we're just going to like into the meta
We need to
and
drive
see if
interest,
it sticks.
right?
Yeah.
I think
Does that hurt sales?
I think it
Maybe,
does.
yeah.
But I think the practicality of it though is like, I would be more inclined of here's how we end an LCG. So when it becomes no longer economically feasible to do the game, here's what we're going to do. There's a known like here's how we're going to end the show at some point. And when it ends, like even with House Cards, the worst
Ross
thing
and Rachel will be together, basically.
the worst thing is to just like end a season.
the
Like
worst
I
thing
think
for 'em.
it's sort of like in an LCG. If cycles are seasons, you write every season so that the end of that season could be the end of your arc. And then like, as long as you don't end a show where like, oh, well, I hope they make it again in 20 years to like finally finish whatever the story.
Yeah, like Firefly is a great example of
Yeah,
that.
Firefly being kind of a bummer of an
Just got
example
canned
where
at
you
the
just
end.
they eventually did a movie though.
Yeah.
But I think in the same way, actually Firefly is a great example because I think even with Game of Thrones, let's say there hadn't been a second edition, if it had been, hey, we're gonna do 12 more packs, and you could either just end it, which is probably the correct call, but sort of like with Call of Cthulhu, how they switched to the fixed boxes, it's like, do you maybe just have this is what's in print? We're gonna make this 6 cycles. This is it, and also
Or that's when you get your injection thing.
once a year, we're gonna print a $20 injection,
Yeah,
and like
and have it one tournament. One
Worlds.
big, at Worlds, we'll have a big gathering, and we'll play this game
like
again.
if right now if in November they had the Call of Cthulhu World Championship, and it's like once a year they put out an injection that just kind of changes things.
Yeah. I bet it would be very popular.
Legacy
Because
format.
what I do as a player at the end of these games is I tend to build like 6 to 10 decks that kind of explore whatever I liked about the game and my favorite decks, and maybe some decks I used at big tournaments or something. I put the rest away or throw it away or give it away or sell it, and then I keep those 10 decks. And it's like I keep revisiting those things. So like right now, if there was still and I think there actually is run by players, but if there was still a Star Wars TCG World Championship, I'd think about going. And if they were putting out one like expansion thing a year, I'd think about buying it.
All right.
So it's just there's a lot of space to explore.
And it probably, the reality is this probably looks like a combination of these things happening if we're talking about, because this is still, I mean, in the grand scheme of business, I would say, this is just still a new experimental kind of format that's happening.
Not even a decade.
It's definitely in stone. Like it's viable. It's just an expansion model, but there's a lot that needs to be worked out if these games are going to be sustainable. And I think a lot of these ideas done in various ways, and probably some that, of course, we haven't even considered, are the way to do that. So, and I think you have to make a choice. Like, Are you attempting to be sustainable here? If not, then I think it's reasonable and respectable to say we're treating this as an experience, and it will be done at a certain point, at which point this will happen, like you said, and we'll see you for the next one, the next ride,
Sure.
the next series.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Nothing wrong with that.
It's like a game that may have a 2 or a 5 or a 10-year run, and then it's over, and then move along. And
Move on. But
and I
keep
think
paying your $15 a month.
But
Pick
yeah,
something up,
pick-
please, for the
well,
love of God.
and I think, to answer the question, are they sustainable? I don't think in their current format you will have an LCG go
Right.
forever. I think there are things that could be molded about it that would make them sustainable, if that is even the goal,
Yeah.
which is a big presumption.
And the thing we didn't really get to is how do you get the barrier of entry lower? After a year and a half, after 2 years, how do you do it? There's got to be a way.
Coupons.
Maybe like an
more next time.
Maybe an MVP product that's like, here are the like 50 most important cards, or maybe pre-made decks is a good way to do it. We've seen this in games before.
Yeah.
So there are ways. There are ways.
There's a million
go.
ways.
Sure,
Let's
we'll
get to the
learn
questions.
over the years.
First, we're going to read some answers from older questions, and the first one is from Michael Meanhart on YouTube. It is, if you were in charge of OP, what would
that's
you
what we're
do
talking
differently?
about.
It is what we were talking about.
Michael, good.
He says, I like what you guys do. Please keep it up. This is the humble opinion of someone who would love to make it in the games industry, but has too many obligations to manage the risks. Non-tournament organized play should be specific to each game, and to some extent, specific to the community as well. Options for card games.
That means put on by the store, essentially. Like if it's specific to the community, then your community leader has to be the person
part
doing
in.
that.
Options for card games could be league nights with alternate formats. Destiny could ignore restrictions. Netrunner could core only or change the IDs of factions and corps. Agate could have faction civil war. So on. Yeah, this is the guy you were referencing.
Yeah, and worth noting, the 2 corps versus 2 runners where credit pools on each side are shared and 10 agenda points to win is fascinating. That is the tension that you're looking for in a cooperative format where we're sharing a credit pool and it's like, is my stuff more important or is your stuff more important right now?
That's
That'd be
actually really
phenomenal.
crazy.
Yeah, can you res that ice on your side? Because then I can't res it on my side.
That's why you don't do joint bank accounts.
It's really great.
Whoa.
75-25, that's the way to do it. I'll get Swamp Lord here if you don't mind. X Swamp Lord X from YouTube. Answer 2, again, organized play. If put in charge of organized play, I create more thematic incentive. I'm talking about this. What draws people to play X-Wing, Star Wars, or Lord of the Rings LCG in the first place? The universe. Offer prizes that feel like they came from the universe the players dive into. So having a very thematic incentive for how to play.
And I think on that
to
note, even prizes being looked at as potentially not even physical things.
Sure.
Like I think that in old L5R, we'll see how they do it in the new one, that ability to impact the story or impact cards that are coming out, just meaningful prizes don't necessarily mean something I walk away with.
Yeah.
Correct.
Which is cool. All right, if you want your question answered right here on the show, you can use the hashtag AskCovenant on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. So first question is from Mick Keel on YouTube. How did you guys run the Destiny draft at Destiny Weekend?
Take it away.
That's me.
You laid down the ground rules, basically.
So effectively, the way we did it is 6 players in a pod, take a booster box, and each player gets 6 packs. And then they basically function like this. Like if we were drafting, each of us would open 2 packs. We'd take the dice from the pack, put it in the middle, so everyone can see the dice. You know that I got Palpatine and Force Lightning, but I can't draft them both. You take the 10 cards, put them in a single stack. You look at them, and then it's kind of like a standard draft. So I pick a card, put it down in my face-down stack, and we pass that stack to the player on the left. You repeat that until that pack is gone. You open 2 more packs, put the dice in the middle. This time pass to the right. Do that again. Then do one last time, 2 packs, pass to the left, and now you've drafted effectively 30 cards. A couple caveats on the deck building side. We allowed players to include 1 copy of any non-unique from Spirit of Rebellion. So you could run 1 Jedi Acolyte, 1 Guardian, 1... Because you have to have characters. We also let them include either the Docking Bay or Moisture Farm battlefield, because you also have to have a battlefield. A couple deck building changes. You could have as low as 24 cards in your deck, max of 20 or 30. You also don't have to match color restrictions for deck building. You still have to spot characters for spotting, or red character only upgrades only go on red characters. And last but not least, we allowed players to include 1 copy each of 4 specific cards from Spirit of Rebellion, which were R2-D2, Hero of the Rebellion, the Smuggling Freighter, Imperial Discipline, and...
Journals.
I always forget Journals of Ben Kenobi.
Everybody does.
Effectively, because you also, if you're going to draft 6 cards, or we assume you're going to draft roughly 6 dice cards, because that's, if you pick a dice card every time you see one, you're going to probably get 6. But if you draft 1 or 2 characters, now you've only got like 4 or 5 dice cards in your deck, and that's a little low. So we wanted to include upgrades that would give you dice and allow you to do the basic things of the game: focus, resources, card drawing, and a little bit of disruption. And
Man, Uncard was so good.
Uncard was
in
so
the
good.
draft.
Discard, don't devalue discard and draft. But anyways, upgrades that also didn't take away from cool upgrades that you drafted. So if you draft Force Lightning, we want that to feel special, or Rocket Launcher, or Vibro Knives even. And so they kind of just added some consistency and guaranteed there were some cards you could put in your deck in case you get to the last pack of the draft and you see Palpatine. Maybe you weren't drafting blue, and it's like, well, now maybe you can't even build a deck with Palpatine.
Yeah.
And we didn't want someone feeling like they couldn't draft Palpatine because that's too valuable not to draft.
Yeah.
As a card. But it was really fun. People had a lot of fun with it, and it seemed to go over very well. And with the way the boxes are laid out, most players ended up with a good stack of cards they wanted.
Yeah.
Which was really nice.
And we'll keep working on it too. So I think that could be continually better.
And next question, we have a returning question asker, which is Philomaster on YouTube. Says, what do you think's been an effective way to balance a card pool retroactively?
I'll take a crack at this.
Yeah, I'm going to let you have this one.
I mean, I think the best way that I've seen it is actually AEG. They will errata cards very directly and then print them as bonus cards in the next pack. And it's like,
That's pretty great.
I mean, if you're looking for the most effective way for us, for the customer, consumer, player, then, oops, this shouldn't have been like that. We'll fix that, give it to you for free in your next pack. It drives sales of that next pack, and it fixes all the problems. So I think that's the best way to do it. Another good way is if you errata a card and then give it in like prize support in the future, like FFG has.
That's probably like the next tier of it,
some of
right?
that, yeah.
We've seen that with Imperial Assault in specific.
Yeah, and then honestly, the best way is a game like Infinity, which doesn't have cards as miniatures, but they don't have to balance anything in reality because there's nothing on the model itself that tells you what it is.
No hard copies of anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So you get on there, you have to go to their online deck builder, build your army, and so within a moment, they can change everything about the game.
Balance restored.
That's
It's
actually
beautiful. It's actually incredible.
That's a technological integration I'm curious to see.
It has to happen.
If these games adopt. It's obviously harder in a card game, but even then, you can imagine if the characters in Destiny didn't have point values printed on them. It's like,
yeah, just go on the FFG app and build your 30-point deck, and it's like, oh, Django's 14 here, and then maybe next month, oh, Django's 16. You can't do that.
Which is actually also another fantastic way to keep a game going.
It is. It is. There's some excitement for you.
Again, it's crazy excitement because every month you could just release a new patch. I know Guild Ball does the once a year we reprint all the cards.
And they do the playbook, the new rules manual. They're on season 3 or 4
It's just like, here's the new rule book, and also all the cards are reprinted.
Dang.
Which is
There's your injection.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool answer to that problem, which is great. All right, well, remember you can use the hashtag AskCovenant. We'll answer your questions. Yeah, right. Hashtag AskCovenant. We'll answer your questions right here on the show, and we'd love to answer them. We'd also love you to answer one of our questions, which is, if you were in charge, what would you change about the LCG format?
Love to know.
Leave a comment, and until next time, keep playing.